Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It hit me last night that I have left some of you hanging. Some of you have discovered my channel because I started talking about how I am on a path to reaching financial freedom and how I got myself started on a budget. And I talked about Jen Dufore, who I will try and remember to link below, really helped me get started on this process. And I just feel it's my responsibility now that I feel like I am starting to be in control of how I spend and where I spend and how much I spend. I feel a responsibility to share those tools because it has changed my world. The first couple of videos I shared kind of just gave you an overarching view of the principles of Dave Ramsey, of some theories of how I have bucketed things, but I haven't really gone through some of the steps. And so what I wanted to try and do is give you an idea of how I set up my budget. And I had to use my buckets that I talked about. So if you haven't, to this point, pulled a year's worth of your finances, do that now. The second step is for you to sort those into categories that make sense. So think of categories that make sense to you, because this all needs to make sense to you. But every line item needs to go into one of those buckets. If you do a lot of online shopping like I do, I also went through my order history in Amazon, payments that I've sent out through PayPal or Venmo, any apps that I use to pay from. So in Chicago, we have Potbellies that I pay from regularly, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks. So things like that, because it might not translate the same way in my checking account, but I'll be able to see that that's what that was. So I pull all that so that I can identify what that Amazon item was that I may have bought. But maybe it's a pet item, maybe it's a gift, maybe it was home repair stuff. So literally detail it out so that you have buckets that make sense to you. So I figured I would walk you through how I set up my budget based on that method. So you'll be able to see where you are now, see if you need to make any modifications, because you might realize that you are using all of your extra money on silly things or on things that you know you could probably decrease a little bit. So things that you could modify so you could come up with your final budget. So I'm gonna walk you through how I did that. And I still need to do this year's budget, but hopefully this will help you get started. And then we'll talk about later setting up sinking funds and what that means, and how you transfer money between things. That's too much information for you. Let's set up a budget. That is step number one. Okay, so the first items that you should really think about in terms of figuring out how much you spend per month on them are some of your basic necessities. So I kind of think of these as the things that I absolutely have to spend money on, right? So for many of us, housing is something we have to pay for, right? Depending on your situation, you could be renting or you have a mortgage. If you have a mortgage, the other thing you need to plan for are your taxes. If you have a house, or even if you rent, you have insurance. And what I call repairs or maintenance. So, you know, if you rent, you might not have repairs because your landlord is paying for that. But maintenance, I'm thinking of things like I need new furniture, I need a new shower curtain, a new comforter, so things for my home. The other thing that are kind of are non-negotiables for me are utilities. So again, this is going to vary drastically depending on your situation. If you own, if you rent, depending on your area. So I, for example, only pay for electricity, heat, and cable. And I know some people are gonna say, why do you even keep that if you're trying to spend less? But you know what? That's just a non-negotiable for me, and I budget for it. Phone It was cheaper for me to bundle that in. I don't ever use it, but it's part of that bill. Things that I don't pay for, but other people do. Water, trash. Kind of all I can think about. I'm sure there's other ones that I'm forgetting about when it comes to a home. And depending on your area, there might be other things like, I don't know, snow removal, grass cutting, I don't know, landscaping. Transportation for me is a big thing. I think for a lot of us, especially if you've got kids to shuffle around or you drive to work, or you have to take the bus, right? So this could be your car payment. Could be a car payment. This could be public transportation passes. This could be how much you spend on gas per month. And I don't mean this could be. These are things that could fall under this bucket. Car repairs and regular maintenance. So regular oil changes, along with like the unexpected, like you get a flat tire or you need a new fuel hose, things like that. Insurance, if you own a vehicle. Parking, so I have to pay a monthly parking fee, so that's my monthly. But then if I go out to dinner, if along my street there is metered parking, so if I'm home and I need to pay for parking, I'm going to call this also meters. So what I have done, and I'll show you when I budget, we'll talk about it later. So meters. Your license or your license plate stickers, or in Chicago we have plate stickers and then we have city stickers. It's another big category. Health is a big category. So insurance, you know, your monthly payments. You've got co-pays, deductibles, and this is insurance for medical, insurance for dental, for vision, prescriptions. So essentially what you want to do is think of all these buckets. So as you pull down everything that you spent and you see each of those line items, if for instance I know that that check that I wrote on March 2nd was the insurance for my car, I'm gonna put it under transportation. And I did this all on an Excel spreadsheet, and I had a main sheet where I had all of the items listed, everything I spent. I inserted a column because, you know, when you export it, I exported it from my Chase account. It gave me breakouts. But I inserted a column where I could put budget category, and I would list housing, transportation, utilities. And then I would sort it so that I could then have individual worksheets for each of these areas. So here, I'm just gonna walk you through the categories that I decided to stick with last year. I'm gonna modify these. So car was one. Crafts and planner supplies. Dining out. I separated that out from groceries because I do a lot of that, and I had coffee included in there. That is definitely gonna change this year because there's a difference there for me. I put donations, that's important to me, so I wanted to be able to budget so that I could continue doing donations. Entertainment. This to me is things like going to the movies, spending money on an app, things like that. Gas for the car. gifts. I love to give gifts, but a lot of my friends have birthday in January. So I wanted to start budgeting, and this will be really key later. I wanted to start setting money aside so that I wouldn't go broke in November and December. Groceries. So as I mentioned, I separated out dining out from groceries. What I call beauty / grooming. You have not seen me on this video, but I do dye my hair because I have a lot of gray hair. I get my eyebrows done, I get my nails done, so that, wanted to start budgeting for that. That's important to me. Health, home stuff, parking, like I said, I do have to park for work. Pet supplies, shopping. I just made this one in general. This is like clothes shopping, mostly clothes I would say, from like, or like random little visits to Target, which yes, some of it could be home stuff, but I just kind of put it in the category of shopping because I will just go shop just cause. Subscriptions. So in here, I wanted to see what I had. So I have things like Spotify, I have a Massage Envy subscription, I have a magazine. You could put that somewhere else, but I kind of put everything in one category so I could see how much I was spending per month. Travel. Travel is important to me, and this is literally like to be able to take vacations, to go visit my sister in Seattle, to go visit my best friend in California. I need to budget out monthly some money so that when I want to take a trip, I can. Utilities, rent, postage. So I did open up an Etsy shop, and what I had kind of put in the budget for postage was blown way out of the water because I didn't even account for it. ATM fees, I didn't have many, but I did have a couple, so I just wanted to put a little money aside for that. Student loans, this is my one debt. Thankfully it's my only debt, but that's its own little bucket. And then something else I did not, that I forgot to do, was to account for tax preparation. So I pulled out my yearly budget, a year's worth of budget, and I put everything into one of these categories. And I was starting to see things like, which one is the least, so for pets, when I added everything up that I spend on, let's see, vet, food, kitty litter, it roughly translated into roughly $60 per month. Now some months it was more, some months it was less. When I did that kind of math for everything, you know, let's say that was 100, let's say this was 200. I'm doing a monthly average here. So now what I needed to do is to figure out if what I bring home every month is going to cover what I make. So let's say this total was, I don't know, $4,200 per month. That's a lot, but let's just say that's what it was. Well, the next thing I had to do was figure out is, what is my monthly take home? Now, a lot of us get paid every 2 weeks, and there are some months that have 2 paychecks and a couple that have 3. What I did was just give myself my average monthly take home. So that means that I took my yearly take home salary, so what I actually get deposited, I divided it by 12 so I knew what it was per month. So let's say per month I get $4,000 per month. Well, if we look at what I calculated before, what I wanted to be spending was $4,200 per month. Not possible. So I need to, at minimum, take away $200 per month. What I didn't talk about is the fact that I still need to set up my emergency fund, and I wanted to start doing savings. So I need to start planning for that. So what can I change in these buckets that will get me under $4,000? So I started looking at this kind of stuff, and I'll tell you the categories that were impactful for me. The crazy ones that I knew I could make a big change in. We had crafts and planner supplies. I was spending way too much money on that per month. Eating out. Shopping in general, because I have a lot of stuff. I think those are my 3 big ones. Clearly, you know, I could decide that we could take away some subscriptions. Under utilities, as I mentioned before, I could have taken away cable. So the goal is to get underneath that number. So let's say I was able to eliminate, or decided to say, you know, instead of spending $200 per month on crafts and planner supplies because I have so much, I'm only going to spend $50. Right? So you kind of set these limits for yourself on purpose so that you can get below here. So let's say I got it down from $4,200 to, let's say we got it down $600. So let's say we spend $3,600, which means then that every month I should, in theory, have $400 left. What am I gonna do with that $400? Well, if I don't have my emergency fund, my $1,000, I'm gonna throw that in there for the next 3 months until I reach $1,000. At that 3rd month, if I've been very good and I really do have this much left, and I don't have any emergencies that have come up, now then I'm gonna start putting it into a separate account. My separate savings account, so that I start accumulating. So let's say at month 3, right, I'll have an extra $200 in theory. So, you know, we'll have an emergency fund that we're not gonna touch, and we will be starting our savings account. Now, this applies to me because the only debt I have left is student loans. So in reality, that extra $200 should not be going here anymore. It should be going to my student loans. But we'll get there eventually. Your goal is figure out all your buckets. Figure out what your average monthly take home is. Figure out what you're spending per month and whether or not you need to make any adjustments. And then figure out how much you have left over and what baby steps you need to start tackling first. So I know for a lot of people when they're doing this, it's really hard at first. It really, really is. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Some months you're gonna have unexpected things that come up, and you might have to, you know, not put anything over there. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. But you need to, but this will really help you focus by understanding what your spending caps are. So I hope that it makes sense. The idea here is to really look at your numbers, figure out what bucket they should go in, and figure out how much you have to realistically spend in that category, whether or not you want to decrease it so that you can start putting extra money into other pockets. The goal here is to tell your money where to go. I think a lot of us have kind of lived life blindly, and we're just so happy that all of our monthly take home was able to go to the right pockets, and you got things paid and you felt like, yes, I'm making an impact. But I will tell you that when I looked at my budget that last year, I realized that I wasn't saving anything. I was actually spending over what I actually brought home, and that was because I had savings from the year before. The idea here is not to restrict yourself. is to give yourself the permission and the freedom to do these things, but to do it in a responsible way so you can reach these other goals. So if you are a hardcore follower of Dave Ramsey, he will tell you to get very strict. Start eliminating all the extras. You can't get out of debt without getting rid of the extra. That's a little tough for me. I am a creature of comforts, so I just started to eliminate some, and hopefully I will get better and better. But don't beat yourself up. Start somewhere and get moving. Something I forgot to talk about. I did this all manually. I downloaded onto Excel spreadsheets and I moved things over just because I wanted to touch everything. But that takes a lot of time. Know that there are systems, apps that you can use. Some are free, some you have to pay for, that will take that data and do it for you, and then you just need to kind of look in the buckets and see if they put things in the right places. So things like Mint, every dollar, it's like YNB, you need a budget, YNAB I think it's called. So there's several of those. I'll try to come up with a list and I'll link them down below, or at least list them down below, so that if that's something you want to explore, feel free. Just know that I manually did it because I didn't want to spend money on that, and because I really wanted to force myself to look at everything that I spent. So I hope that makes sense. Start there, create your buckets and your budget, and then we'll talk about sinking funds next, because that game changer, I promise.